Hello and welcome to our Silverfish Basics Masterclass. I'm joined by one of the best at this game, Lee Newson, and we're at a venue that's absolutely full of silvers, so we should get plenty of bites, Lee.
Yeah, we will do today. Yeah.
So what are we fishing for, species-wise?
So this lake has got thousands of skimmers, little small skimmers. There's been a real boom in those. There's some big bream, up to 4 or 5 pound, and lots of little perch.
And obviously this is all about numbers. We're going to be catching a lot of fish today, getting a lot of bites. So how are we going to approach this lake?
I would say a waggler is a really good approach on this lake. You can catch fish. It's quite deep, so you can catch fish up off the bottom, past your pole sort of range, and then hopefully we'll catch some skimmers and little fish on a short pole too.
Brilliant. Can't wait to get started, but we've got to mix some ground bait first, haven't we?
We have indeed, yeah.
Let's get that done then. Right, Lee, so mixing ground bait. What we're going to do?
So we're going to mix, we don't need a lot, we only need a tiny little bit. We're only going to put 1 ball of ground bait in at the start. So we don't need a lot. I'm just going to put probably half a bag of ground bait in, and we're going to get it started, and then we'll have to leave it for a bit, come back to it and finish it off.
And is there any particular sort of ground bait you'd recommend?
I don't like something that's too heavy on fish meal and too carpy based, because you're going to have problems catching loads of carp, and this is going to be a silverfish match. So the skimmers are used to pellets, so something with a bit of pellet, like crushed expandery sort of type ground bait is perfect. I like this one because it's sweet and perfect for skimmers.
And we're about to start the session in probably half an hour, so you'd recommend mixing that up just before we get started?
Yeah, about half an hour before you're going to start fishing, I would say is perfect. Gives it time to settle, and then you can push it through a riddle and get it all finished.
Right, show us how we do it then.
Okay, so like I said, we don't need too much. We'll put sort of half a bag of ground bait in, and then I actually, rather than adding a little bit of water, I try to just put enough water in to start, and you'd be surprised how much you can put in. So that it looks like a lot of water, and I literally just swish that around, and it's very, very wet.
If you just tilt that bowl towards me, yeah, we can see there. That's literally like a slop, isn't it?
Yeah, very, very wet. But you don't need to worry. That will come round, and it'll be perfect. Saves lots of messing around. Keep adding water all the time. Leave that for about half an hour, come back to it, push it through a riddle, and it'll be absolutely bob on.
Right, Lee, we've left that about 15-20 minutes, have we?
15-20 minutes, and it's sort of set in the bottom there. Look, it's set rock solid almost. So all I do is I just turn it all over like that to loosen it up. You can see it's not sloppy sort of mess anymore now, and then you can just pop that onto your riddle.
What size riddle's that? Is that like a ground bait riddle or a maggot riddle?
It's a maggot riddle.
Maggot riddle, okay.
Yeah, maggot riddle. And then just gently push it through. You want it quite wet because it's deep here, and I want the ground bait to get down to the bottom and not sort of break up. And just gently push it through.
It's worth just taking your time to get them big bits through, isn't it?
Yeah, that's it. So yeah, it's heavy. That's what we've created. We've created a nice heavy ground bait.
I noticed the one you've chose there as well, dark in colour. Do you think that's quite important?
I do. Yeah, yeah. I always feel more comfortable using a ground bait that's quite dark. And then so we've got it through. It's loose like that, but we can make a nice sort of weighty ball out of it that will break up nicely once it's on the bottom, and hopefully get lots of little skimmers feeding over it.
And we're ready to go?
We're ready to go.
Yes. Right, Lee, we're on the box, and you're going to talk me through the rigs you've set up.
Yep. So this is my pole rig. We've only set one up. Going to keep it nice and simple. It's quite deep. I don't know if you can see that there. We've got a good depth there, and that's only close in. So we've set up a 0.4 gram rig. It's quite a robust float, so even though we're fishing for silverfish, it's an occupational hazard in these types of venues that you're going to catch catch some carp. So you don't want a float that's going to explode and blow up on you. So we've got a nice robust float. It's got quite a thick buoyant tip in it, but we're going to have it dotted right down, so we'll still see those delicate little silverfish bites. We've tied it up on quite robust line as well. Don't think that makes too much difference, especially as we move into the warmer months. We can get away with some nice line on that. I've got an 015 main line on that, so that's nice and strong. And elastic wise, this is a little bit of a compromise here, because we need a nice soft elastic to catch the silverfish with, but again, we're going to hook a few carp, so we need something that's going to give us a chance of getting those carp out. So this is a 1.6mm hybrid type elastic. But
what would that be in old sizes? What's that, about an 8?
That's about an 8, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's an 8, sort of an 8 to 10, I think it's classed as. So yeah, a light hollow elastic would be just fine, just as well.
I notice on the end there you've got a Dacron connector.
Yeah, I have. I still use Dacrons. I know a lot of people now go direct onto the elastic. You know, that's fine. It's just a personal thing. I've always used Dacrons, and
But you'd be happy with a plastic connector?
little plastic
or,
connector. Yeah, no problem at all. I think that's just totally personal choice.
And there, in between your Dacron and your float, I notice you've got 2 shot. What are they for?
They're 2 little back shots. They're number 8 cubes, and I always put 2 on about between my connector and my float, and it just helps you keep that float nice and still. This is open water here, so you get what's called surface skin, and your float can move unnaturally, and I just use these to anchor everything in place and hold it all nice and still and get the best presentation that you can. It's a good little trick, that.
Love it. Another thing I've noticed, Lee, on that float, you've got 3 silicone rubbers, and the bottom one's actually overlapping the bottom of the stem.
That's right, yeah. That just keeps everything nice and neat, and you keep your line nicely away from the wrapping around the bottom of the float.
Yeah, it helps stop tangles.
Stops tangles, yeah.
Brilliant. So that's really simple then.
I don't push that rubber there either. I don't know if you've noticed that. That's slightly away from the body of the float. I think a lot of people they push that rubber there tight to the body of the float. I don't like to do that. I think sometimes it can cause the line under pressure when you hook some of these bigger fish. It can cause the line to dig into the side of the float. So I keep it a bit further away, so you've actually got a line, the line's not digging into the side of the float.
Absolutely, yeah, makes total sense.
Then shotting wise, it's quite positive, and it's certainly nothing complicated. It's just a little string of number 8 cubes. I use cubes. I know some people use shot. I prefer to use these. I can feel like I can change my shotting pattern around if I need to. And they're all one size. They're just number 8s, so I get nice positive bites, positive readings, and they're literally just evenly spaced, just over about 8-10 inches there.
Excellent. So that's, yeah, 10 inches.
10 inches.
It looks so that they're not tapered. That's like an even spread.
Just an even spread.
Got you. That makes total
that's
sense.
just a standard way I shot most of my rigs for silverfish fishing on this lake.
And I suppose that's a nice compromise, Lee, isn't it, between a bulk, which would just get it very directly down,
Yeah.
or a strung out pattern, which might see you catching the wrong fish, might it?
Yeah, exactly that, yeah. And then, hook wise, we've got an 18 hook there. That's a little Guru LWG, and that's tied to 013.
Is that a 6-inch hook length, that one?
6-inch hook length, yeah.
Perfect. Now, one thing that I've also noticed that I know is important on this sort of venue where you do hook the odd carp is you've got a puller style kit there, haven't you?
Yeah, side puller. I don't think you can fish these types of venues without that, to be honest. You'd have elastic all over the place, and you can be in danger of breaking your pole sections if you're trying to land big fish with your pole up in the air at the wrong type of angle to net the fish. So this allows you just to pull elastic in and get the fish coming up to you with the within range, popping up within range, rather than having loads of pole in the air, which can risk breakages.
So obviously a lot of poles have the puller style kits or built in like that one does.
Yeah.
If you haven't got one of them, is there anything you can buy that lets you do that?
You can indeed. You can buy a bung that you can put in the bottom.
Yep.
So you don't need to worry about, you know, if you haven't got those, you can actually buy a bung that goes in the bottom that you can thread your elastic through, and you can put it has a little rod that comes out the end, and you can put the bead, this little bead here. Then you can actually pull your elastic from the bottom rather than from the side. It achieves exactly the same thing.
And they're called a puller bung, are they?
Puller bungs, I think
Yeah.
they're called, yeah.
Yeah.
Very inexpensive way of making sure your top kits are right.
Perfect. Well, that's the technical side of the pole rig covered. And you've only set one up, so that's lovely, nice and simple.
Yeah.
What about the Waggler?
So, the Waggler, we're actually not going to fish the Waggler on the bottom here because it's deep. And the skimmers here, the little skimmers, they like to come up off the bottom. We're going to loose feed some maggots. Not too far out, so you know it's nice and easy. Just ping a few maggots out, and the skimmers will come up off the bottom. So we've set that so about 3 foot deep, 3-4 foot deep, and very, very, very simple. I've just got a swivel connector there, so I can change the size of my float if the conditions change, and I've just locked it in place with 2 non-toxic shot there. They move very easily. I never have any problem with them damaging the line or anything. And then we've got just a couple of number 8 cubes down the line there to a 12-inch hook length, and then we've got a size 16 hook on there. That's a B911, that one. Nice and sharp, doesn't go blunt.
Now I know you catch a lot of fish on this Waggler. With regard to reel line, what do you favour? Do you like a heavy, thick main line on your reel or something a bit thinner?
I like something that's not too thick. I think it casts better.
Yeah.
So you can get away with maybe using a slightly lighter float if your line's thinner. It goes through the rings nice and easy, so you can cast it a bit easier.
So what sort of size reel line would you go for?
I would say for around about sort of 018, something like that.
About
018.
£4, is
Yeah,
that £5?
about £4 or £5. Yeah, that'd be perfect. And it's very strong. These modern lines are so strong, you're not going to have any problems with it breaking.
I notice you've loaded that right up to the rim of your reel as well,
Yeah.
right up to the rim of the spool.
Again, that just helps with casting, so your line is peeling nicely off the rim of the spool there. If it's not filled up properly, and you end up with a bit of a lip, and the line obviously drags against the spool as you're casting. So a nice thinnish main line, and fill the reel properly, and it just makes casting so much easier.
Let's talk very briefly about rods then, because there's lots of rods on the market. There's like pellet Waggler style rod, there's some really thick carp Waggler rods you see out there, but you've got something a bit finer there.
Yeah, this is actually a match rod. I mean, it's called a carp rod, but it's not a pellet Waggler type rod. It's a bit of a compromise between a sort of a pellet Waggler rod and a traditional style match rod. It has got quite a fine tip in it and a nice soft action. I think with these small fish, if you're using a rod that's too stiff, you can have problems with bumping the fish off as you strike. So yeah, I mean, you know, most rods are fine, but try to avoid something that's too stiff and too heavy.
Makes total sense. So that, I think, is everything covered, and it's time to get fishing, isn't it?
Can't wait.
Right, Lee, all ready to start.
Yep.
So what's the plan?
So we're just going to put one ball of ground bait in on our pole line to start with, and then we'll start on the Waggler. The fish will be a bit further out in the lake because it's still a little bit chilly, and then hopefully they'll move in on that ball of ground bait on that pole line, and we can catch some silverfish there a little bit later on.
Lovely. So how far out are we fishing on the pole?
So just a pole, top kit and 3 sections. As it warms up, then fish will come in even closer.
Plumbing up wise, is there anything you've looked for in particular on that line?
Not particularly. It's a very uniform sort of depth here. So I've tried not to fish too close in at the minute because we might catch a few carp. So I've just looked for a nice, comfortable length to fish more than anything, to be honest.
Right, let's get some bait in. So are you going to squeeze that into a ball, that ground bait, or are you going to put it in loose?
No, I'm going to put it in a ball, but not squeeze it too hard because we mixed it up quite damp. It's nice and heavy anyway. So I'm not going to put it in loose because it's quite deep. So I'm going to put it in with just a very gentle squeeze, just to get it down. Very gentle squeeze like that.
And that's just ground bait, or have you added any loose particles to that?
I'm just going to put ground bait in, and then I'm just going to loose feed a few maggots over the top.
Perfect. Right, let's get it in there. Now, it's important with this, isn't it, to have a marker that you're lining up with so you know exactly where your ground bait is.
Yeah, that's right. There's a little bush on a point directly opposite me there. So I'm just going to line it up with that. I'm just very carefully slip it in. Important not to rush when you're doing this because this is quite important. I'm probably only going to put one ball of ground bait in, so I want to make sure it goes in the right place.
I noticed when you did that as well, you got the end of that section right under your arm, so you knew the exact distance you were out.
Yeah, yeah. And it's important as well not to rush when you're getting it out, because I see so many people shipping out in a rush and the pole drops off the back of the roller, or the cup spins round and you drop your ground bait 2 metres away from where you wanted it to go. So that's not an ideal start if you do that. Best thing to do is take your time and make sure you do it properly.
And we'll look at roller placement in a minute, but having your roller in the right place is important when it comes to that as well, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Got to make sure everything's nice and smooth.
And now we're going to leave that and start on the Waggler.
That's right, yeah. So, nice catapult. I've got one with quite a strong elastic in it, because we're going to be going out probably about 20 metres, I think. And just going to keep a constant flow of maggots going in. They haven't got to group too tightly, so you don't need to worry about that, because we're going to be fishing a Waggler, which means we can search around a little bit. We're not going to be like when you're fishing on a pole where everything's going in one little hole. So we're just going to ping a few maggots in regularly, and then just prop a Waggler over the top and hopefully catch some nice little skimmers off the bottom.
Rightly, it's time to get fishing. So what we're putting on the hook to start with?
Just going to slip one maggot on, just a single maggot. Single red maggot. I actually, interestingly, I hook them upside down. I find you get less, the maggot doesn't double over on itself as often if you do it like that.
So by upside down you mean through the thin end of the maggot?
I do, yeah, I always hook them through the thin end. I think it does two things. I think firstly, you get a lot more hook point showing. And secondly, I don't think the maggot can actually double back over on itself like you get sometimes, which can cause fish to come off the hook because your hook's not gone in properly.
I notice as well, mate, they're both hooked very thinly and they're both wriggling. Yes. If you put a maggot on and you bust the bait, would you take it off and put another one on?
100%, yeah. So I'd nick it through as finely and thinly as I can to keep that maggot as lively as possible. Very important.
Lovely.
All right, let's see if we can catch one.
It's a really nice sort of gentle lob there. You've not forced that cast at all, have you?
Yeah, no, you don't. No need to force it out. You don't want your Waggler crashing in and diving in. Just gently lob it out and feather it in.
And you've fed what, 6 or 8 maggots there?
Yeah, 6 or 8 maggots. Need a constant flow of maggots, but not too many maggots, because again we'll end up with problems with carp. Might take us a little while to get them going.
Was that a bite?
Yep.
Wow, straight away near enough.
Yeah.
Oh well, yeah. So that catapult you've got there, which model's that?
That's a Preston one.
And you said it's medium heavy elastic?
Yes, yeah, I like a heavy elastic.
I suppose that just means a bit less effort when you're firing, doesn't it?
Yeah, and especially with the Waggler, when you're fishing it just that little bit further out. I like to fish with a catapult that's capable of doing the job without forcing it too much. There we go, we've got one.
Right, look at that.
hopefully be a nice little skimmer. Or is it a perch? Oh, we've caught a perch.
You're off the mark though.
Yeah.
I noticed that strike as well, Lee. It was firm, but you weren't really pulling its head off, were you, so to speak?
No, that's right. You just need to lift up the line off the surface enough to set the hook.
Now, when that cast lands in the water, you're almost feathering that line in, aren't you?
That's right, yeah. Yeah, that keeps everything nice and straight as well. So when your waggler lands in, you keep all your tackle fires out almost past the waggler rather than landing in a big crumpled heap, which obviously it can cause tangles, but it also isn't given the correct presentation as the bait falls through the water.
Absolutely. And today, obviously, the wind a little bit awkward on this peg, but it has dropped a little bit.
Yeah.
There's no real bow in your line. It's a nice straight line between your rod tip and your float.
Yeah. Yeah, obviously, if the wind catches the line and you do get a bow, it will cause your waggler to skim through and pull through awkward.
Are there any conditions where you wouldn't fish with a waggler?
When it's really, really windy, or if the wind is hacking into my face, sometimes I wouldn't. You can actually fish I do it quite a lot on this lake actually, is fish a little straight lead.
Okay.
That works.
And just waiting for a positive bite,
Yeah.
positive pull under.
That waggler's just pulling through a little bit there where the skim started to catch the line, so we'll just come back in again.
How often do you leave it before you recast on average?
I don't leave it too long, probably 30 seconds to a minute, and then I'll cast it again.
I suppose because that bait's presented sort of mid-water, that the fall's quite important, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right, and you're catching off the bottom, so I think it's quite important to keep casting and keep your maggots falling through with your loose feed if you can.
I noticed you fed twice that time. Is that just to really kickstart the peg?
Yeah, just trying to get it going, trying to get a few fish in the peg. I'm sure once we start catching them, there was another little bite then.
So that was straight after you fed, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Checking the maggot to see if it's been sucked.
I noticed as well, Lee, your feed's landing like up to your float, but near side. You're not feeding past your float.
No, that's a skimmer. Yeah, you've got to try not to cast feed past your float. I think that's quite important. I like to always like to try and catch the, there we go, a nice little skimmer. I always like to try and catch my side of the feed if I can.
Yes.
Rather than, because the problem is if you're putting your feed too far out as well, those fish back off slightly. You've just got to keep going further and further away from you to stay in touch with them. 100%.
Something I noticed on the cast there as well, you've got a nice long drop between your waggler and your rod as you casted.
Yeah, it helps you with a little bit of another bite straight away. Helps you with almost like a pendulum sort of type motion to just get everything nice and straight and cast in.
We can see now you're getting into a rhythm. It is an active way of fishing.
It is,
You're in and out.
It's my favourite way actually of fishing. Oh, we're getting a few bites now, but I've got to start hitting them.
I notice every time you come in, you're looking at your maggot as well to make
Yeah.
sure it's not been damaged.
Make sure it's not been bust.
A few little knocks on the float, but you're waiting until it properly disappears.
Yeah, I want a proper bite, yeah. There's probably quite a lot of fish all swimming around in the sort of upper layers. It hasn't taken them long to come to those maggots. Once it warms up, there'll be tons of them to catch. It'll be great.
So that nice sort of long drop, and then you cast just a very smooth backwards and flick it out. No force as you might do with a feeder, is there? It's
No.
more of a lob really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And just feathering the line down.
I think it's useful to try and learn, if you can, to feed while you're holding your rod as well.
Absolutely.
Just, yeah, takes a little bit of practice.
How do you do that then, Lee? Just show us step by step.
So I literally just sort of open my hand up on the rod. The rod will almost balance itself on your knee just with your elbow. Oh, we've got a fish on.
That just goes to show that you can strike, you know,
Exactly.
while you're mid action if you do it that
Yeah.
way, doesn't it?
Yeah, another nice little skimmer.
Change the maggot. How important do you think it is to have a maggot that's always wriggling when you're doing this?
I think it's important, yeah. I mean, they're eating maggots that are wriggling and live, so I think you're much more likely to get a bite if you're using a bait that looks exactly the same.
So that time then with the feeding, you've got the rod trapped under your arm.
Yeah.
Your hand's just opening up.
Opening up, take hold of the pouch, pop a few maggots in, and then you can actually, rather than pulling the pouch back, you move the catapult forward. So instead of doing that, I'm doing that.
That makes sense. You're never not fishing then, are you?
No, exactly, yeah. Well, we've got lots of fish there now.
Obviously today we're getting some signs and we're already catching skimmers. What would you do if maybe you hadn't had a bite by now? Would you just keep feeding?
Yeah, I'd keep feeding. They will come. There's so many fish in these venues that they will come.
Do you think it sometimes takes the fish a while to find the feed?
100%, yeah. And it's deep here as well, like I said. If I was fishing a very long pole, you'd probably start on the bottom, and you'd probably catch a little bit quicker. But once we get these fish coming up competing for their maggots, I mean, this is almost unbeatable once it's on. There's another one.
But already you're putting a lot of fish in the net. I notice as well when you're playing fish, the rod's low until you're ready to swing it, isn't it?
Yep, ready to drop them off.
So that cast again, we've got a nice long drop and it's just a gentle overhead lob, feathering the line down, and by feathering, that's just putting your finger on the spoolie, isn't it, to slow the line
that's
release.
right. Yeah, and then after the float's landed, I actually just try to straighten the line out slightly there as well. I don't know if you picked that up.
How do you do that?
I just give the reel just literally like a turn, half a turn, and it just straightens the line up.
And that just means you're more direct on the strike?
Yeah, and it keeps you floating, so it stops that, because we've got a little bit of surface drift. If I can start with a nice straight line, it keeps you floating position for just that little bit longer, just them few seconds longer before it starts to move.
Makes total sense. And then unhooking the fish, you're not putting the rod down like a lot of anglers do. You're just trapping it between your elbow and your body.
Yeah. Yeah, just trying to stay as efficient as possible. God, I never even had time to feed that time. See that, just that little half turn there on the reel, and it just straightened that line up.
I mean, when you watch any good angler, they make it all look easy, and that's what you're doing. But the key thing to note here really is the rhythm that you're into with the feeding, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah,
So
work nice and hard. Keep some bait going in. Keep casting, and it will all fall into place. The harder you work, the more fish you catch when you're fishing like this, for sure.
And then you strike, you're dropping that rod nice and low. Why do you play the fish low like
Just
that?
to stop the fish from splashing on the top when I'm reeling it in.
Okay.
And then as it's in front of me, just lift it up and swing it to hand.
Trap the rod, as you can see, on the butt
Yeah.
between your thigh and your arm.
And then it's all nice and simple. I haven't got to put the rod down, lay it off to the side or anything. Just keeps it all nice and efficient.
And also, you've no real slack line, have you, which can cause tangles?
It can cause your line to wrap around the tip of your rod. So as you try to cast out, obviously your line's all wrapped round.
A gentle lob. That little turn of the reel to tighten up the line between the rod tip and the float. Trap the butt between your arm and your thigh. Feed like that with a catapult. And he's poised like a heron.
Sometimes when you don't get a bite, like I haven't then, it can mean there's a rogue carp swimming around in your loose feed.
Ah.
That can happen. It's unusual not to have got a bite, so let's just check we've got no bait. That bait probably just came off, so there's no point just sitting there when you know you should have had a bite. This goes back to what I was saying about just working hard.
Yes.
You know, reel in, check, make sure. So that maggot must have just come off on impact as the float landed.
There's a bit of a common misconception, I always think, that fishing's about patience.
Yeah, that is so true. Especially in our type of fishing, in match angling.
It's about working hard, isn't it?
Absolutely. But in a nice sort of way.
Oh, yes. Being busy.
Absolutely, that's the best way. Bump that one. Lots of fish there.
Obviously, you've got a depth there that the fish are happy feeding at. If you not had a bite, would you ever think of deepening that off? Or?
Yeah, that's another part of being busy. So deepening off, shallowing up. As the day goes on, you do have to alter things and work things out. A lot of that comes with experience, but if you're not getting bites, it sort of stands to reason that the fish are at a different depth, because we know they're here.
Notice then you had a miscast, but
Yeah.
straight away you reel in and recast.
No point leaving it, it was wrong.
That's one big takeaway from this, I think, already. You've got to be prepared. If you don't do it right, whether it's hook the bait right, whether it's cast right, you've got to be prepared to straight away redo it.
Absolutely right, yeah.
And that's another fish on the Waggler. So hopefully that's given a good little taster to this method. So we'll watch Lee catch a few more on this, and then we'll have a look on the pole line. So Lee, I can see today obviously most of the fish that we're catching are small enough to swing to hand. What
That's
makes you decide to net a fish if you did decide to net it?
I think as you go to lift it out, it's quite obvious when that fish feels too heavy to lift.
Yeah.
I would say that anything up to about 4 ounces, you can safely swing to hand, and it's safe for the fish for you to swing it to hand. I think anything over about 4 ounces, I net it for 2 reasons. Firstly, it's probably better for the fish that you net it, and secondly, it's much less likely to drop off. Once they get to a certain size, if you try to lift them out and you're not sure whether to lift it or not, invariably they drop off, you've lost the fish, and you would have been better off just slipping the net under it.
We've all done that a few times, haven't we?
Absolutely, yeah, done it loads of times.
Also, while we're fishing this Waggler, do you feed your pole line at all, or are you just going to keep...
I do start to feed my pole line, but because I've just put that ball of ground bait in, I'm just going to leave that for sort of 15, 20 minutes, hopefully get a few fish over it, and then I'll just start trickling a few maggots on it.
So that there's fish there ready for when we drop on it.
Yeah, that's right, yeah. So you're just sort of priming it up ready.
Rightly, it's time for a little go on the pole.
Yep.
Now, the first question is, how long have you left it before dropping in over that ground bait?
It's been a good hour, I'd say an hour, hour and a half.
So an hour and a half of waggler fishing, and then
Yep.
we're happy to sort of drop in.
Yep.
And you've had pretty much bites straight away, haven't you?
Yep, instantly.
Now the beauty of the pole, this sort of range, because obviously you're fishing accurately and you're hitting every bite,
That's right.
is you're actually catching faster and more efficiently.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. If you can get them to come in close on the pole, then it is the most efficient way to catch them without doubt.
And just shipping out, lowering that rig straight over where you fed that ground bait.
Yeah.
Are you loose feeding it all on the line, or?
I've loose fed a few maggots occasionally, but I'm trying not to loose feed too many because of carp and because of not wanting the fish to come up off the bottom. While they're nailed on the bottom over that ball of ground bait, it just keeps it nice and easy.
Absolutely. So a single maggot on the hook?
Single maggot, exactly the same as before. I'm hooking it upside down.
And just ship it out to, what, it was about 8 metres a pole, that?
Yeah, so my top kit and then 3 sections on, so yeah, it's about 8 metres. I'm just holding it right, using those back shots just to hold it right over the top of my ball of ground bait, and it's literally a little dink on the float as soon as the maggot hits the bottom. Oh, we've got a nice perch this time.
Perch.
Fat little perch.
And what do you take as an indication to feed again? Is there anything that you'd look at as a signal that you should be putting more bait in, or?
Just purely, I feed to my bites. So when I say that, if I feel like my bites are getting slower and I'm waiting longer for a bite, I'll just dink a few maggots in just to draw a few fish back in over that ball of ground bait. Eventually I may have to put another ball of ground bait in, but I try to avoid doing that as long as possible. The more I can catch putting in the least amount of bait is how I would sum up to be the best way to do it.
And that's just because you get cleaner bites, would you say?
Cleaner bites, and because we're on a venue that's absolutely full of carp.
So the more you're feeding, the more you're in danger of bringing those wrong species of fish into the peg.
Yeah, and you only need one to just be swimming around in the area, even if it's at mid-depth, and your peg just dies straight away.
Absolutely. Very notable on the strike, Lee. It's not a big movement. It's not, you're not like,
No.
you know, trying to pull the heads off when you strike. It's like a gentle lift, really.
Yeah.
And that's just so you can reset your rig exactly like that, isn't it?
Exactly. So I can just lower it back over where that ball of ground bait is.
What are those two back shot doing for you? Are they just keeping it direct between the pole tip and the
Keeping it
float?
direct, and also just holding the rig still. Holding the rig really, really still. It gives your float something to anchor against. It stops it from moving.
And you have really dotted that pole float down.
Yeah, I think that's quite important for skimmers because they give you tiny little bites. And I actually prefer to fish with a slightly thicker bristle that I can dot right down to a pimple, rather than using a finer bristle, which I have to have a bit more of it showing so I can see it properly.
Absolutely. I can see some little bubbles there coming up around the float as well. And that's fish grubbing around on the bottom.
Grubbing around, getting their noses in the silt. There we go.
That was a lovely clean bite.
Another perch. It's unusual because it's been all skimmers so far.
Although obviously you're catching really quickly at the moment, it's noticeable you're not rushing.
No, no, smooth and efficient is the way, I think. I remember watching a peg full of perch now, I think. Remember watching Dave Vincent many years ago on the canal in London, and he looked at the slowest angler on the bank and just always caught the most fish.
Yep. Doing it right, I suppose.
Just making sure he did everything properly. Right, we've got a load of perch in the peg now, which is a bit
Is
of
there
a
anything
shame.
you can do to get rid of them and catch the skimmers again?
I might put another ball of ground bait in.
Okay.
I'll give it a couple more minutes because there was a lot of skimmers there up until a few minutes ago, so hopefully they'll come back. But that might be just where I've dinked a few maggots in as well.
Yes.
Dragged a few perch into the peg. Definitely feel like something's happened here. We might have even had a carp come into the peg.
How do you know that?
Just purely by the fact that the skimmers have gone, and
Yeah.
then he says as he hooks one, and we started to catch a few perch. That could have been that the carp had just mooched around and scared them away.
With you.
So that's why I don't panic to sort of straight away just put another ball of ground bait in, which could spoil it. It might just have been that a big fish has swum through the peg. You know, there's so many in here. You're never far from a carp.
And as you say, with that feeding, less is certainly more, isn't it?
Yeah, and definitely just have to sort of try and read the situation if you can, and not just think that it's your feeding. It can just sometimes be that there's a carp swum through your peg. I think that was a skimmer as well.
Let's just talk a little bit about your pole setup there, Lee, because I noticed you've actually got a roller and a pole sock set up, as
Yeah.
well as a little EVA bar for you to rest your cupping kit on.
Yeah, it's just all about making sure that you're efficient and also making sure that your tackle's safe
Yes.
and out of the way and doesn't get damaged. So the roller, I've got it positioned so that it's right where I need it to be behind me, but that you've got not too much of the back end of your pole overhanging the roller, because obviously then your roller's going to pivot and potentially get damaged. Another nice skimmer, I think.
So you want it always almost tilting forward into the
That's a
pole
perch.
sock, don't you?
Yeah, yeah, and then the pole sock just allows me to drop the pole nicely, safely, where it's not going to get damaged, and I can reach it just to ship back on again. It's not going to bounce around on the floor. I'm not reaching back down again to pick it up when I go to ship out again.
That makes total sense. And then it's notable, as I said, although you are fast, that accuracy is still supreme, isn't it?
Yeah.
So you're straight out to your far bank marker. The butt of that pole's right under your elbow, so you know exactly where your mark is and where you're fishing over your ground bait.
Yeah, yeah. It's not just about shipping you in and out quick. I think it's about getting your bite quick. And the best way to get your bite quick is to be accurate and careful with what you're doing.
Absolutely. So to sum up then, feeding wise, whenever we're getting bites like this, we'll be topping up with ground bait to keep the fish pinned down. Is that
Pinned down,
correct?
yeah, yeah, definitely. There is days when they like a little bit of loose feed. It's sort of every day's different. It's hard to give hard and fast rules, but
course.
certainly when you're fishing in deepish water like we are today, I'd like to try and keep them on the bottom if I can.
That makes sense.
I
Say
think
for
I might
example we'd sat here now for 20 minutes though, Lee, and we'd not had a bite. Would you be picking that catapult up?
Yeah, yeah, and in fact I feel like now, I need to put a ball of ground bait in because we've got all these perch in the peg.
Let's have a look at that topping up then. So
Yeah.
what we're going to do with that. So we're in the cupping kit again. Are you going to feed a ball as big as the initial or a
No,
smaller
I'm going
one?
to put a smaller one in, so it's one that I make with one hand. Just a nice little sort of gentle squeeze there. Little small ball with one hand. Just to try and just get a few skimmers back into the area. I think something's disturbed them. I think we had a carp come through and just move them. So again, just be really careful where you put it. Make sure you put it in the right place. Make sure it doesn't bounce out. And hopefully they'll come back onto that. Might take a few minutes.
Do you always find it best to fish on top of your ground bait, or do you sometimes fish slightly past it?
Sometimes fish past it. That does work very, very well. Sometimes catch them bigger bream sitting just past where your ground bait is. Yeah, I'm sure we had something disturb the peg.
But now by feeding that ground bait again, you've almost reset the peg, haven't you, in a way?
Yeah, so I've not caught a perch, which is good because they felt like they were the wrong fish. But I think I might have hooked one there.
That said, I'm guessing you'd always rather be putting something in the net.
Always rather be putting something in the net, yeah, than nothing. But the skimmers are the real weight builders, and that's what we were catching.
If you dropped it at this distance and didn't catch, would you consider going further, or would you
Yeah.
just wait for him to turn up here?
No, I would consider going further, but we were getting bites on the Waggler too, so that gives you an option.
Yeah, it could be a case of alternating between the two, couldn't it?
Yeah.
Might be a
We've got
skimmer,
a
is it?
skimmer that time.
So they're back over the feed then.
So hopefully the skimmers have come back over that border ground bait. So by just resetting everything, starting again almost.
So the key points we're feeding then, if you're catching the skimmers and it goes iffy on the pole, top up with a ball of ground bait to try and keep them on the bottom. If you're not getting so many bites, loose feeding is a good way of pulling fresh fish in. And if it's a really iffy day and you need to rotate between pole and Waggler, you can do that, can't you?
Yeah.
Brill. Right, Lee, you're shipping that rig out now. Is it a case of just dropping the float straight on the mark, or do you lay it in?
No, I lower it down. So I'm not just lowering it in a great big clump. I'm just lowering it in, especially the last sort of 6 or 7 inches, just letting everything straighten up and lowering it in so I get a really nice presentation.
And then a bite
And then
straight
get
away
a
off the
bite.
back of that. Yeah.
Literally, if you do that and lower it in like that, you quite often get what happened there, which is a fish literally take the maggot as it almost as it touches the bottom.
And say, for example, you'd done that and not had the bite, how long would you leave it in there before you lowered it in again?
I try and judge how quickly my bites are coming. So if I know I'm waiting a little while for a bite, I'm quite happy to sit and wait. I don't want to move it around too much necessarily. But if it becomes obvious that you're getting your bites quite quickly, then I'd just lift the rig, reset it, lower it back down again.
That makes
Rather than
sense.
just sitting, there's no point just sitting and not doing anything.
So what we're saying, maybe 2 minutes without any action before you reset it?
Yeah.
There we go, lovely bite. Cracking bream. And a great fish to finish on. So loads of information there for anybody thinking of having a go at silverfish fishing, wanting the basics covered. Where would you go, Lee, if you wanted a bit more detailed information?
YouTube is a great place to start. There's tons of information on there, some great videos by some of the best anglers in the game. There's tons of stuff you can find, tons of information.
So lots of more detailed info on there. Lee, thank you very much. That's been a brilliant
It's been a pleasure.
video, and yeah, we'll be back doing some more again in the future, I'm sure. What a lovely bream.